Hey everybody, so this is Eli with Elfbait. So I had a little bit of time to kill and figured I'd jump on my phone and do a real quick video here on kind of what's been going on. So Elfbait is not dead. I know it's been a while and I was kind of slowed down on videos, but my daytime or my regular gaming has kind of slowed down. So recently though, I got a chance to start up my Sunday game again. That's the game for my daughter and her friends. And so that's kind of an interesting concept because, or an interesting game because, I mean, we were away from it for a good long time due to summer activities and things like that. So when we came back to it, kind of an aborted start. First attempt didn't go overly grand. To get everybody back. I think we'd just been away from the game too long and there were some new kids involved and it ended up shutting the game down soon. But it came, one thing that really came out of that is I really feel like the long pause sort of broke the stride, and with younger players that can be a thing, and capturing their attention just wasn't going right, with the story that was going on. So I kind of made a snap decision. And when we brought it back together the next week, or 2 weeks later, I should say, the next time, I had sort of a plan to set a new beginning for the campaign. I basically decided I was going to turn it all on its head. And so this is something that I wanted to talk about, because, I mean, what do you do when your game, whatever you're playing, kind of stalls out? Whether, life gets in the way, things are slow, maybe you've had an influx of player changes, people leaving, people coming in, whatever the case may be. Maybe moods have just changed. And you can't always do this. This is what I did was a kind of an extreme example of this, but what can you do to get back on track? So what I did in this game for my Sunday game is I went ahead and decided to basically turn everything on its head. I kind of had a chance to, over the summer, to really read the kids that were around and get a good idea of who they were and what they were really into. And so when we came back and finally got it on a start, I came prepared. I had typed up some changes for their characters. Each character was going to go through a bit of a shift in being, and put them in these envelopes. And the next time their characters went to sleep, when they woke up, they weren't in the same place. They weren't even in the same world. I had them wake up in a completely alien environment that was much more high fantasy and a little bit more imaginative. Well, not imaginative, because, I mean, all the campaign worlds are run are imaginative, but it was a little bit more high fantasy and a little bit more, quite a bit more high fantasy. It was actually really kind of crazy fantasy, almost like psychedelic fantasy. So they woke up in this environment, and they, at a certain point, I had them all open up their envelopes, except for one player who didn't have any obvious changes, and they all opened up their envelopes and went over their changes, and they kind of spent some time describing them, and just kind of dropped them into the middle of action. They ended up in a place with floating islands and sky, shifting sky around them, and there were strange creatures and strange beings and airships and clockworks and stuff, and so it was really kind of a crazy good time. And I could really feel that, I really felt like at the end of the session that I'd kind of grabbed them and brought them back and was delivering to them something that I think that they could get behind a little bit more, something that they could invest in. My Monday group, totally okay for the slow grind and the political game and the heavy NPCs and everything, but I felt I needed something a little bit more cartoon action hour for the kids. And not that they're not capable of playing that, but I really just don't think that that's what they're into. I mean, they're all smart kids, but, you got to know who they are. So I went with that. But, this is something, this kind of led to me thinking about, how could you do this with other campaigns? And so in other games, you could definitely do this as well. You can have passage, you can have time pass to where it allows you a new starting point. If you really feel like the players were just kind of grinding along and not doing anything, winter comes, maybe they winter in an area, and then you can start with a new plot point at the, when adventuring season comes around, or, big changes to the environment that they're playing in could happen. Maybe a new god shows up, creating an entirely new wave of adventure options. Maybe there's some big political upheaval, a crusade or a political coup or a major war. Things that really just turn the setting on its head and kind of turn up the burner a bit under the game. You can have major things happen to the players. If the players have had relationships that have been kind of going on in the background, whether that's romantic entanglements or interpersonal relationships with other party members or NPCs, maybe a brother, sister, mother, wife, something like that. That person could die. Maybe there's a new child born into the family. Maybe there's a crisis in their homeland. Something that just kind of recaptures and redirects, kind of gets everybody thinking towards game again. And the key here is to not scrap the game and start over, because that's something I almost did with the Sunday game. I almost decided to run a different game, have everybody make new characters. But I felt that was probably a losing proposition, especially with younger players, that it might just really irritate them. And so, maybe just what I ended up doing was just changing the course of the game and redirecting with the same characters. So, we're sort of doing a little bit of this, or I imagine it's going to be a bit like this when my Monday D&D game group starts back up again. We've been kind of on a bit of a hiatus, doing some board games and playing Star Wars RPG after our pause. But when we come back, and some seeds were planted in our playing before that almost form a nice adventure path. There are 3 things going on that sort of line up in a direction of travel in the world, which is not necessarily by design. Like anything good with seeding, there just happens to be a lot that's caught their attention, and those things all happen to be in the right place, the things that they have glommed onto. And some of this came out from what the players wanted to do. So that anytime you're kind of stuck, go mining the actions of the players again and see if there's something that maybe that they have laid out for you. In this case, but when we decided to pause, I asked everybody what they were going to be doing with the downtime, the game time, and we determined what they're going to be doing, and then I've kind of figured out how much time would be passing. So it's going to be about 2 months of game time, which has now turned into almost, I think we've actually gone that long, if not longer, in real time. But based on what they told me they were doing, I came up with some downtime actions and downtime events that occurred, some information that they garnered, and that kind of captured their imagination. So when we come back, we're going to have a slew of things to work on, which they may run through those and run the course of those, or they may spread them out, or they may decide to completely ignore them. Some of them may have decided that, that path wasn't where they wanted to go, but it gives me a starting point. So yes, I mean, if your game isn't going right, going the direction that you want it to go, then there's certainly nothing wrong with finding a way to redirect it. Before you decide to just kill the game and maybe ask, hey, you guys want to do superheroes now or whatever, look and see if, you got to know your players. So certainly this is a player read, but, take a look and see, is there something I can do to really, reignite the fire in this game? Is there a direction I can change without absolutely jumping the shark? Can I get into the game through another angle? Is there something that I need to throw out the players? Is there something I need to take away from the players? Sometimes, one of the best motivations is removing something that the players have had. If they have a comfortable city that they've been hanging out with, have something horrible happen to that city. Not, necessarily just wipe it off the map, but maybe there's a fire. Maybe there's a plague or something that dislodges the players from that place. Maybe they are offered a job. Don't be afraid to just hand opportunities to the players. They don't always have to go looking for them. I mean, you've done this for setting up adventures a lot by having them find clues, or, the crazy guy busts into the inn screaming about goblins. Why not have, especially if your characters are getting some reputation, why not have a herald show up or a messenger show up, with an offer of employment? They have to get to that place now, especially if you make it far away and not in the same city that they're in. This herald will have come from somewhere to them. If the herald's going to stick around and lead them back to where this employment is, the employment could be valid. Maybe they're about to be, taken in by some lord. Maybe they're going to be getting a patron. But that patron's probably going to want stuff. That patron's probably going to need something from them. But it's going to change the tack of your game. If your players have been going around kind of free-forming it and chasing clues and riddles, and suddenly now they have a patron, this patron can send them on missions. He can give them adventures to go on, especially if they've agreed to be part of his household or under his employ, and have conceded the fact that they're going to be taking orders from him. At this point, you now have an NPC who can say, okay, here's a map. There's an old temple here. I insist that you go check out this location and that you uphold the agreements that you have made with me. It could be that maybe one of the characters has a religious calling, and answers the call of a god. And now he's courting one of the various orders. And to do this, there are trials or things that he has to prove himself. Thieves are good for this. Thieves guilds, paladins, you can go ahead and have them, maybe they, that vaunted order of holy knights in your campaign setting, they want the paladin in their group. So the paladin is now having to impress these knights. Or maybe a lord wants that paladin, maybe he wants that hero's blade. And there's all sorts of stuff that can come from this. But the key thing is to try and change the direction that your campaign's been going, away from what seems to have either stagnated or maybe wasn't working to begin with. A lot of times, especially if you've got a new group, and this is something I'm learning with my Monday group, I've only played with one of these guys before in a game. Played with him in lots of games, so I know him pretty well. But I was talking to, the rest of them, of the party are coworkers, who just kind of learned that I ran games, and I decided to run a game again. And so what has happened now is, I knew them as office friends, and, they were certainly friendly, and we were getting along, and there was no reason not to bring them in. But now I know their play styles a bit better. And there are things that I've kind of thrown out in the game that maybe, aren't optimal for the group, but I was kind of feeling out the group for the first 3 or 4 levels of their characters. Now I know them better, so after this long pause, I can come back and really capitalize on what I've learned about these guys, both as friends at work, but also I now know their play styles. I've played in some board games with them. I've played in another role-playing game with them alongside them as players, so I really have some good intel on the kind of people they are and what will motivate them. So this allows me an opportunity to kind of adjust the direction of the game. So, don't be afraid when you reach those low points to just pull the rug out from under yourself and your players, but not in a horrible way. You're not trying to be cruel or mean here, but don't be afraid to change it up. Kind of pull things out from under your comfort, the comfort zone that you may have gone into, or it may not even be a comfort zone, because chances are if you're wanting to change it, you're probably uncomfortable. But don't be afraid to go ahead and move forward in a different direction that certainly could be rewarding. Sometimes that can be crazy, throwing your characters into a realm of floating islands and weird clockwork bartenders and strangely configured humanoids, humanoid pirate captains of skyships and stuff. It's not the angle that you want to use with everybody, but it's certainly, there are always ways to put your characters into a new kingdom. There's planes, there's all sorts of planes that they could shift around from. If you have warlocks in your parties, warlocks have extra planar patrons. What happens if that patron needs them a little bit more directly and decides to kind of reach out and touch them and pull them where he needs them? Give them reasons to go places. Is there a new land that's been discovered that the king wants them to explore? Are they in good enough with the king to where he comes to them directly? If they've got NPCs that they've been making friends with, those NPCs can either directly get them into new areas, new territories, or indirectly by disappearing, having problems, having trouble. But don't be afraid to have an NPC, come up to the players and offer them something. If they've got an aged librarian that they've been dealing with, have him suddenly be on his deathbed, and, in his last breath, he's like, "I've been holding on to this map for some time. Please, fulfill my life's work. Hands him this map to a new realm that he has always thought was there. He's known was there, but maybe he's been mocked and was too old by the time he discovered it to really look into it himself. He never had any children of his own, so please bring his life's work, to fruition. I mean, that's, off the top of your head, but, it could either be that or the king's like, I've received this map from my librarian who is dying. I say to thee, go unto this land and claim it for me. Whatever. The point is, sometimes you just got to uproot your players and put them somewhere else or into other situations to really rekindle that campaign. It's probably going to be good for you as a DM. It's going to be good for them. Gives you a chance to try some new stuff. Gives them a chance to get out of the humdrum of what's been going on. Watch out for it in your game. See where it's coming. Don't be afraid to say, all right, guys, we need to pause and we're going to come back. I got something for you. Or, ask them, hey, you guys still having fun? I got some ideas. We can change it up. Trust me? Cool. Yeah, I mean, that's, you got to talk to your players. Anyways, this was just a real quickie while I was sitting here waiting for my wife to get done with some business. And, so I'm actually, as you can see, I'm from the car. But Eli with Elfbait signing off for today. Thanks for tuning in. Like, share, subscribe. I've been asking for it for a while. I don't have a lot of viewers out there yet because we're still growing and I'm not really consistent with these videos. But if there's stuff that you really want to hear me talk about, by all means, put it in the comments or send me a message directly. I can definitely go ahead and take a look. There's also an Elfbait Facebook page. If you search for Elfbait, it'll come right back up. So it's a pretty good community. It's not huge, but a lot of my friends from my existing gaming groups and stuff are there. So there's a lot of wisdom and knowledge there, and you can also throw out questions there. But have a good one, and get out and game. Bye.